Welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this is episode 77, May 21st, 2014. If you want to see all of my episodes of Walk in the Park, you can go to walkinpark.com, my vid blog as I like to call it, and they're all there. And this one will be posted there very soon. So today, we are going to start off going to Robert H. Treman State Park, just south of Ithaca. We'll go up at the upper end of the park, which is technically in the town of Enfield. And this was actually May 3rd, 2014, Saturday, a special day across New York State. I Love My Park Day, Parks and Trails New York, which is an organization that supports parks and trails. In many parks all across the state, I think more than 80 parks, had an event on this date where volunteers were recruited to help get parks ready for the season and do projects and put their work into, put their abilities in and their labor into getting things ready for the season. These are picnic tables obviously being built in the upper park, in the parking lot up there. The materials were brought up by the park staff, and they assembled some 20 picnic tables or so that will be used in the new campground loop in the lower park. So this was a tremendous help. Lots of people got involved. There were some 55 volunteers, and they weren't all adults. Some of them were kids. We'll show you some pictures of kids in a minute. 44 adults and 11 minors. Yeah, there's a little girl using the wrench there to tighten up a bolt. Okay. And so they put together all these picnic tables. That was a lot of fun, assembling things. Here they are. They've got many of them done now, and this is kind of a comprehensive shot of many of the picnic tables that were made that day. So that was a great project. And the I Love My Park Day was in part sponsored by the Friends of Robert H. Treman State Park. And if you want to go to our website, I'm on the board of the Friends of Robert H. Treman State Park, TremanParkFriends.org, and we got lots of information there about our organization. We support the activities of the park, including organizing events like this, educational events, sponsoring and creating literature for the park, self-guided trails. We have a big archaeological project going on there in cooperation with Cornell. And we also, one of the things we really care about is the old mill, which I'll have a picture of later, which was built back in the 1830s and now is a mill museum, and it's also a Civilian Conservation Corps museum in there. So we've been very involved in both of those aspects of the mill and the CCC camp. So let's go back to some of the other projects that we were doing at I Love My Park Day. Here is a family that is up on the Rim Trail, and they got leaf blowers and they were clearing the trails. So they did quite a bit of trail. Let's see how much, excuse me, 2.25 miles. The whole Rim Trail goes all the way down to the lower park. 2.25 miles they cleared of leaves and branches and so forth that had come down during the winter. So you can see it's an entire family. This is a young man, young guy who's really getting into it there with the leaf blower. We'll have a video in a minute that will show you these things in action. But one of the biggest projects that got going that day was filling sandbags. Filling sandbags. Now, why would they be filling sandbags in the park? Well, we'll get to that. But first, there was a big pile of sand, and the park had taken some highway cones and cut off the tops of them and used them as funnels. So you could shovel the sand into the funnel of the highway cone into bags, sandbags. So that's what they did there. That's very cool. And here they are. There were different groups of people, quite a variety. There was a group from CFCU Credit Union. There was a Cornell group. There were some other businesses in the community that sent workers, and then families. So, okay, doing more than filling the sandbags. This little girl was very ambitious. She did get some of that sand into the sandbags, but she would get the shovel full, but then sometimes she had a little help had to have a little help getting the shovel up to the top of the cone. But she went right back at it. So that was neat. There was some really hard-working little kids there. I was impressed. I probably wouldn't have been that hardworking when I was that age. So then the sandbags had to be trucked over to a footbridge, which here we'll look the other. Here's a footbridge there in the background behind the sandbags, and vehicles have trucked over the sandbags, and the footbridge crosses the stream, crosses Enfield Creek, which goes down through the gorge, and then so at the north side of the footbridge, they unload the sandbags and also stone. You see that big pile of stone there. That is to be also carried over and wheelbarrowed over the footbridge. There it is there, wheelbarrowing it over. By the way, that footbridge had its walls or parapets washed off in a terrible flood last August. I think it was about August 9th or so. And so that footbridge has been closed for this season until we get those parapets rebuilt. So that's a little hint to what these sandbags and stones are all about. Here's Josh Teeter, who is environmental educator at the park, and he at the state parks, Finger Lake State Parks, and he actually lives in the park there. That's his daughter, and they have come across the footbridge. You can see the south end of the footbridge on the right there. You can see they're still doing a lot of masonry work there. But this sand is going into the gorge. So here's a couple that are here. They're moving rocks, and they put a big plywood board with horizontal, I guess, furring strips on it so they can move it up over some steps. And then you had to go into the gorge itself, and lo and behold, there is ice. There was ice in the gorge. Look at that on the left there. That is all ice. It's about a foot of ice that had to be chopped out by the park staff before I Love My Park Day on May 3rd. And this is the latest that any of us remember. I used to work for the state parks. Any of us remember ice like that in the gorge in May, very late in the season. So that's been a problem, I guess, over in Watkins Glen as well, which has some very dark areas that don't get much sun. Now this is the next footbridge at the end of the first section of the gorge, and the walls there were actually, the wall on the right was ripped off by that flood, or at least in part, and had to be replaced. So last fall, the end of last summer and last fall, it actually was replaced, and that's what this picture is from. And it goes back, and there's the new wall on the right, and I guess there might have been some damage to the wall on the left, but I'm not sure. So once they get to the big staircases in the gorge, you can't use a wheelbarrow anymore, so they have these back to some technology from about 5,000 years ago to carry rocks and sandbags. But it was a lot of fun with these young women that were carrying them down. And finally they get them to their destination, which are places where they are doing the stone masonry. It's my understanding the sandbags are sand for the mortar to do the stone masonry repairs to the steps and the walls and so forth that were damaged so much in last August's flood. This upper section of the gorge has actually been closed since then, and there's so much work to do, as you'll see in a moment, that it's going to be a little while before they get it open. Nobody can really make a commitment. There they are at the bottom of one staircase. There's a wheelbarrow, which they then transfer to the next area as far as they can. You can see the sandbags in the carrying, I don't know what you'd call that thing. Here they are. They're carrying the wheelbarrow maybe back up. No, I guess maybe that's not a wheelbarrow. Maybe it is. Yeah, anyway. So here's one area in what they call Devil's Kitchen, where the walls have been wiped out by the flood, and you can see that they're doing stone masonry on the right there, and there's the materials that have been brought down. So both stone and sand were brought down. Again, some more stone masonry repairs going on. So a lot of work to be done down there. This was about the farthest that they brought. This is just around the corner from the big waterfall, Lucifer Falls, and they brought up the stone and sandbags. Now last August, I mean, you may know Lucifer Falls, but you probably don't know it like this. This is the big 115-foot high waterfall, and it was bursting with water. This was taken, I think, by Josh Teeter, the environmental educator. This is when the water level had come down, because when it was really roaring, it was up over the trail and ripped off the walls on the trail, and the whole section of gorge there would have been just completely enshrouded in spray and mist. I don't think you would have been able to see what was going on. So you had to wait till, at least that's been my experience when I've gone down there in high waters events. This is from the South Rim Trail overlook looking back to the gorge in Lucifer Falls. So then you walk, if you go back to this picture, you walk just around the bend and you come to this. And now this is a bend in the trail and the staircase goes to the left. Lucifer Falls is just to the right over that wall. And normally there's a wall that goes around this staircase, and so it would be right in front of you. But as it curves right there around the bending staircase, it goes to the left and then comes back around at the bottom of the cliff. You can see in the left there. When water leaps the wall during these floods or high water events, it will pile up against that wall and just push it right out. And I've seen this happen before. It's not the first time that section of wall was blasted out. Here's some guys that were down in that the Devil's Kitchen area, just farther up, that were clearing the trail from a lot of debris. They had sent in people on the cliff to do what's called scaling, to knock the winter loosened rock off the cliffs above the trail. And that had been complete, but there was still a lot of that, plus a lot of leaves and what have you, that they'd cleared off the trail to get it ready for us actually to come down there and work. So did a great project down there. Then one of the other things that was going on was in the old mill. This is, I think it says, what, 1840 or 7 or something, but I think it was actually built in 1839. And then there was another mill that preceded that. And that's a museum. That's on the National Register of Historic Places. The whole Upper Park is a historic register site. And these are some of the members of the Friends of Robert H. Dreeman State Park cleaning the mill. So they were out there working on picnic tables. They were carrying stone. They were doing lots of things. And so let me just see what else they did. They cleared gravel from, there's a cross bridge. If you go down below Lucifer Falls, then let's see if we get back to that area. Below Lucifer Falls, downstream, it would be to the right. I haven't included a picture of that, but there is a footbridge that goes across the stream once again, but beyond the falls. And so they cleared gravel and debris and so forth from that bridge. It piled up against there. So the masons were going to use the supplies and so forth that were carried in. The deputy town supervisor for Enfield was Vera House Strait. Said a few words and volunteered herself. And overall, it was an awesome day, according to Cassie Lovelace of the park, who did much of the organizing and got a lot of the sponsors, too. There were quite a few sponsors. I'm going to have a short video in a moment, and they'll list some of those sponsors. And some of the sponsors gave food and refreshments. There were sandwiches, there were wings, there were salad, coffee, and a number of other foods and drinks and so forth that were provided by area businesses, local businesses, quite a few of them, for the volunteers. And then afterwards, this went from 9 a.m. to noon. We had a lunch from the volunteers eating that scrumptious food. And finally, the park manager, Jim Dunn, who's standing there, he had been down in the gorge with a couple of volunteers clearing out from the debris around that footbridge I just mentioned. And he's up there expressing his appreciation for what everybody did that wonderful day in I Love My Park Day in Robert H. Dreeman State Park on May 3rd. So I got a very quick little video here to show you that kind of sums it all up. So just stand by. We'll get that going. On May 3rd, 2014, volunteers gathered at Robert H. Dreeman State Park near Ithaca to participate in I Love My Park Day, which was occurring at parks all over New York.
If I look away, I can't see her taking
Sean McGee.
And you're here at I Love a Park, My Park Day?
Yep.
With what group is volunteering?
Flora Rosehouse from Cornell University, one of the West Campus residential communities.
Yeah.
We're taking the stones and the sandbags from the stairs that you see up there down and then bringing them back over here and piling them up to be used further down in the park.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they had all that storm damage.
Yeah, a lot of storm damage.
Flooding damage. Oh.
It's a lot worse than I actually thought it was too.
Yeah.
Part of the upper gorge will remain closed until trail repairs are complete. Okay. Well, we had some rain last week, and I was worried that maybe some of the work that had been done to repair from last August's flood in our gorges may have been undone and set us back. But I just talked this afternoon to Sherry at Robert H. Freeman State Park. He said, no, the water rose, but it didn't do any damage. They had to close the gorge trail at Buttermilk Falls, but I don't think it did any damage there to speak of. This and the next few pictures are by Lucienne Vervilliers. I hope I didn't mess up her last name. Who went out, as many other people did during last week's heavy rains, and got some amazing photographs. I sometimes do that, but this time I relied on others to take these amazing pictures of the high water, in this case Buttermilk Falls, roaring with muddy water. Not a time you want to be on the trail. You slip into water like that, you are done. And that has happened. So here is a panorama of Buttermilk Falls on the left and Buttermilk Creek over to the right that she took. So that's a fun perspective of it. And then another one from the picnic area. And then finally down on, there's a little footbridge that crosses the creek farther down, and the waterfall is in the back, and the water's rushing towards you, heading out towards Cayuga Inlet, and eventually to go to Cayuga Lake. And you can imagine that all the streams, including Cayuga Inlet and the lake itself, got very muddy. Well, then she headed over to Ithaca Falls, and of course Ithaca Falls responds very well to heavy rains and snow melt and that sort of thing. So this is from the Lake Street Bridge, looking over there. It's the easy one to get to. And then she ventured into on the trail in the gorge itself, and as usual, the stream has hopped its banks, and the whole bottom of the gorge below Ithaca Falls is basically a flood zone, and it rises like this, and that's why there's not a whole lot growing there. There's a few trees that struggle to live there, but they are constantly hit by floods that rip out a lot of trees and plants and so forth, and the soil. So then at the other side of the Lake Street Bridge, you look downstream, and this is what it looks like. It heads out over the flats of Ithaca, and we're going to take a look at a short video. I think she must have done it with her smartphone that Lucienne did that day. That'll give you some moving images of this rain event. Okay, so pretty powerful, and well, when that water goes roaring across town, or comes out of our gorges into town, like Buttermilk Falls and 6 Mile Creek and Cascadilla Creek and Fall Creek over Ithaca Falls. Well, in the old days, the streams used to find a swamp and wetlands, marshes, wooded swamps, and so forth, and they could jump their banks, and much of the water and the mud would end up in the swamp. The speed of the flow of the water would be decreased, and the sediment load would be, in large part, deposited in the wetlands. And in fact, that's what Ithaca is built on: thousands of years of deposition from the gorges into the south end of Cayuga Lake. Well, of course, human beings have been here for about 5,000 years, but for the last couple of hundred years, we filled in most of that wetland, and so now the creeks have nowhere to go but straight to the lake. And if you go back and look at this Fall Creek picture here, what you can't see is that levees have been built on either side that force the water to go out to the lake and not spread out over the neighborhood like they did back in 1978 before they built the levee here and flooded Ithaca High School and the neighborhoods in the Fall Creek neighborhood. So same thing with the other creeks, Cascadilla, 6 Mile Creek. They are channelized. They are bounded by walls that just force the water to go, and the mud to go pumping out into Cayuga Lake, as this picture by my friend Bill Hecht shows from a few years ago in a different after a different storm, and all the water pumping out. Right in the middle of the picture is Fall Creek coming in between, well, actually in Stewart Park there, and on the right, the big stream, that's Cayuga Inlet, pumping their mud into the lake. So, so let's take a look at the just how much of the land in downtown Ithaca, the wetland and the marshes and the plants and so, I mean the forests, wetland forests, have been filled. Now, not only have they been filled, but they've been paved over, and there's lots of roofs and so forth, and especially in the last few years with the building of many of our big box stores and parking lots. So we're going to take a look at a video by Photography 4D. They have a camera they put on a what they call a quadcopter. It's kind of a drone. They operate remotely from the ground. They're doing a lot of interesting aerial photography. So let's go look at that. thank you, Photography 4D. You might want to check out their Facebook page, and they have a lot of other videos posted there. Interesting stuff. So, so all that water goes roaring out to Cayuga Lake off those parking lots and what have you, because it no longer soaks into the ground and into the wetlands and fills. So we have tremendous sedimentation in Cayuga Lake. And that's a sort of an environmental and water quality problem. Imagine being a fish with gills, having to breathe in that water. Not too great environment. And also a lot of chemicals like oil and other chemicals from parking lots and roofs and homes and what have you. They end up pumping out into Cayuga Lake. Not such a good situation. And the lake gets muddy. And I went down to Stewart Park, and everything, as far as you could see, and it's actually farther, I think, than that picture I showed, just that Bill Heck picture from a couple of years ago. As far as you could see, the water was muddy. So, and it, in fact, the lake is in flood stage right now. It's right, just it's as full as it can be before it starts flooding. Actually, a number of parking lots and roads and lakeshore features that were somewhat inundated. So, muddy Cayuga Lake, but people were down there and having a good time, sailing even on the lake, and so there were kayakers out there, and there were geese along Fall Creek, and so I took a minute to enjoy them, and let's take another minute ourselves to do it. A Canada geese family in Stewart Park. So, of course, these weren't the only waterfalls, the only places that were roaring last week. And Lisa Hedrick of Ithaca was traveling up by Teganic Park, and she stopped for this picture of Teganic Falls at the Falls Overlook. So that's going to be our parting shot for today. And I want to thank you all for joining me. If you want to see the more of our episodes, you want to see this episode online, go to walkinpark.com, episode 77. And thank you all for joining me and for your attention, and we'll see you again soon.